So today we're going to be reviewing the movie Violent Night, and I don't think anyone really asked for this review, but I felt like reviewing it. I saw it on opening day and felt like talking about it. It is a dark comedy. I'll get into all the descriptions about it in a second. But there's just so few horror movies coming out right now, at least, you know, big theatrical release movies and things like that. So I thought, why not? Why not review Violent Night? I got an open spot in the schedule. Let's talk about it. Now, this is described on Google as an action comedy movie starring David Harbour as Santa Claus. And on IMDb, it's described as action comedy crime thriller. So nowhere is it listed as a horror movie, but a dark comedy. It has some violence. I thought it was still fitting and worth talking about. A team of elite mercenaries breaks into a wealthy family compound on Christmas Eve, taking everyone inside hostage. But the team isn't prepared for a surprise combatant. Santa Claus is on the grounds, and he's about to show you why this Nick is no saint. That's a little bit corny, but I didn't write that. This is actually written by the same team who did Sonic the Hedgehog from 2020. So that gives you a little bit of perspective on the type of humor in this maybe. And it's directed by Tommy Wirkola. I think that's how you pronounce his name, who also directed Dead Snow and Hansel and Gretel from 2013. So it seems like this is a common pattern with Tommy's directing style, this combination of thriller, gore, mixed with campy comedy. Now, a fact that I read about this movie that seems fake, but we'll go with it. This was originally intended to be an Easter movie, but they had to redirect and make it into a Christmas movie because David Harbour refused to wear a bunny suit. I don't know why that seems fake, like a made-up fact, but maybe it's true. Maybe he just did not want to wear a bunny suit. I think it works better as a Christmas movie. I don't think this would have been as effective or well-received if it was an Easter movie. Although we are lacking, I guess, in the Easter kind of action thriller, comedy, gory movies. So I would have welcomed it. So I have some thoughts. Let's get into my thoughts. First, we're going to start with what I liked about the movie. We'll talk about what I didn't like and my criticisms, and then I'm not going to do any spoilers in this video. Some of these things might lean a little bit spoilery as far as like you're not going to be able to discover them yourselves on a first time watch. So if you're trying to avoid everything about this movie, then maybe watch this video after you've seen the movie. So what I liked, the first 30 minutes, first of all, were fantastic. I feel like the hook and the introduction of characters and everything in this is really fantastic. I think this movie has a great setup and backstory, and I really like the introduction of Santa. Also loved David Harbour as Santa. I think he was perfectly cast in this role, and I can't picture another person like playing this character. I think David Harbour was perfect. There was a really great origin story for this Santa and this movie, which I really, really loved. It was so creative and so unique. I almost wanted a little bit more of it, and I wish they leaned into it a little bit more. However, towards the end of the movie, it was a little bit spoon-fed. Like, we had characters describing things to one another, and I feel like it could have been left out. I feel like it could have been more vague and it would have been fine, or give us a lot more of it and like show us instead of tell us. There's one particular sequence in this movie that I really, really enjoyed. It's very much an ode to Home Alone. So if Home Alone wasn't an adult movie, that's what you're gonna get from one of these sequences. Now, for me, that was like the tensest part of the movie. That's where I felt the most tension because I knew what was coming. I knew it was going to get violent. Now, overall, I feel like the whole scene was not needed. I feel like they came up with a good idea to do this homage to Home Alone, because they talk about Home Alone in the beginning of the movie as well, and make it more adult. And of course, I love that theme. I love the execution, but I do feel like they came up with the idea and didn't want to let it go. So it could have completely been removed from the movie and it still would have been fine. Would have been the exact same movie. I'm happy they kept it in, but I don't feel like it was necessary. Like, it was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and that's probably why they kept it, because it is so funny and, you know, fun to see it pan out, but it didn't really add anything. Now let's talk about some of the action scenes. Now, I'm not typically a huge fan of action movies, and this definitely felt a lot like an action movie at times. The one-on-one fight scenes I feel like were really well done. They were probably my favorite parts of the action. I didn't like the big groups or things. So the one-on-one action scenes or the one-on-one fight scenes were definitely stronger than some of the other scenes and delivered some great action moments. And most of them were good. Most of the fight scenes were entertaining, but they were definitely lacking something, which we'll get to in my criticisms. One thing the fight scenes did offer were creative death scenes, which is kind of what I was hoping for in this. I was hoping it wouldn't just be like the same weapon used over and over again, and it wasn't. So we got to see a variety of different gory death scenes. I wasn't necessarily expecting the creative fight scenes, but I was hoping for them. My expectation, or not my expectation, but my hopes going into the movie was actually Halloween Kills, but for Christmas, and it's Santa instead of Michael Myers, even though Santa is technically the hero in this movie. There's even a hilarious line by one of the characters that says, "Christmas dies tonight." I'm not even kidding. I don't know if that was intentional, but it made me laugh so hard because I don't know if it's self-aware or if that's even a reference to Halloween Kills, but I literally went in, I told Ryan before we saw it, I want Halloween Kills out of this. I want creative deaths. I don't care if the story's really bad. I just want to see some gory stuff, you know? And they literally said Christmas dies tonight in the movie. It was fantastic. So the last thing, I don't know if it's really a positive or a negative, so I'm just gonna put it in between the things I liked and my criticisms for the movie. It references a lot of other movies. I feel like this was a compilation of different Christmas movies pieced together. And sometimes the references were fun, and sometimes they were a little bit too on the nose and a little bit cliche. So I think sometimes it works. There were some moments that literally were recreated from Santa Claus, the Tim Allen one, which is my favorite Christmas movie. And I don't know whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. I think it's really gonna depend on the viewer, and if you will point and be like, oh my gosh, I know that scene, or if it's going to be just copying a bunch of other Christmas movies. I feel like there was some originality behind this, but it wasn't a lot. I wanted a lot more out of it. Okay, let's get into everything I didn't like about Violent Night. So firstly, I feel like this movie was 30 minutes too long. I think it runs almost 2 hours, and you can definitely tell that there were sequences in there that they just didn't want to cut, and it just kept going and going and going, and it wouldn't reach a climax. So I feel like they could have easily edited out 30 minutes, including my favorite scene in it. But like I said, it just wasn't necessary, and I think the movie would have benefited actually from removing it or incorporating it in a different way to make it kind of move the story along instead of it feeling really disjointed. I feel like a lot of the scenes were very disjointed from one another. The humor. I wasn't a huge fan of this movie. Just a little bit too goofy for my personal taste. It's going to work for a lot of people. The guy in front of us was laughing the whole time. Every time there was a punchline, he was laughing. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. This is the 4th video I have filmed this week. Anyway, it's just not my personal taste of comedy. I prefer it to be way more subtle. I mean, there were scenes, one of the characters gets shot in the crotch area, and he's literally just yelling, my nuts, and it's supposed to be funny, and I just don't find that type of humor particularly funny, so it's gonna work for some people. It just didn't work for me. Now, I wanted gore, right? I wanted Halloween Kills level of creative deaths and gore and whatnot. I know lately I've not been a huge fan of gore because being pregnant, I'm just not really into it. But that's what this movie promised me, I feel. I had seen that this movie was gory, it was bloody, and it's called Violent Night. And I wanted to see Santa Claus kill some people. I think that's the whole point of watching this movie, is to see that. And I feel like the gore and the brutality was lacking a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Now, seeing how it's described and the genres, I didn't know that going in. I thought it was literally a horror. So I expected way more gore. In fact, I was a little bit nervous. Like, am I gonna be able to handle this? Because I'm not a huge fan of gore right now. But now it makes sense that, given that it's described as like an action thriller crime movie, why there wouldn't be like a ton more. Or, I mean, there's a lot in it, but it's just not as graphic as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like Halloween level of gore, and it just wasn't. So there's more blood in this movie than there is actual gore, so we don't actually see a ton. For one, they cut away a lot. They don't show it straight on camera, and then also a lot of it takes place in the dark. There's like a whole fight scene that is completely dark, and you can't see a lot going on. And I feel like that's because their budget wasn't big enough to really highlight and like zoom in on the gore and things like that, which is fine because there were a couple scenes where the gore really stood out and they did show it on camera and like it was kind of graphic, but maybe 2 or 3 scenes that I can think of. So don't expect like a ton of brutality. There's a lot of deaths, you know, they're creative. There's a lot of blood, but just not a lot of like that gore that I was kind of expecting. And then this is why it feels a little bit disjointed, because we have this crime action thriller stuff going on, right? But then you have these cheesy, lighthearted moments that feel like a traditional Christmas movie, like Christmas with the Cranks, like traditional Christmas movie, far removed from any kind of thriller or horror. And I don't know if it was intentional or if it was self-aware how cheesy it was, like how heartfelt these moments were, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I think it's mostly because I didn't love the side characters or the side plot of like the family dynamic and things like that. I wasn't really into all of that. It felt a little bit like Knives Out, but set around Christmas and there's a killer Santa. I don't know. So I really wish they would have cut like 30 minutes of it. I wish they simplified the plot a little bit. I wish they kept it to like the fighting and the action scenes versus the heartfelt moments. I'm sure it benefited from having that a little bit, but there were some scenes that were just like too inspirational, you know, like too happy for the type of movie that I expected to watch. And of course, I wish it showed more gore and didn't cut away or have it be filmed in the dark. So overall, I think this movie is exactly what you would expect from this kind of movie. Although I will say there are some things I'm not talking about that were surprises along the way, and I think you should find those out for yourself. And I think they made for genuinely really good plot points, and I wanted to see more of that, less of like the family drama heartfelt moments. Now, after watching it, I am surprised it got such a wide theater release because, to be honest, this kind of felt like a straight to streaming type of movie, almost like a Shudder movie that they would release in December for Christmas. That's the vibe I got from this movie. So I am surprised it has such a theatrical release. So given that, I'd say wait for streaming for this one. It's not really anything special. Is it unique with the origin story and the concept? Sure, but I don't feel like it is very strong. It has its moments for sure that I really enjoyed, but I'm definitely not like rushing to see it again. Or it's definitely not going to be a movie that I watch every single Christmas, you know? I do predict a lot of people will love it. I think it is an entertaining movie. Like, I wasn't bored, so that's a good sign. And it's almost there for me. It's almost there. I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5. And even if it improved on every single criticism that I talked about in this video, I'd still only give it about a 3 out of 5. It's fine. It's fun. It's what you expect when you see the trailer or you look at the poster. Like, you know what you're getting out of this movie. So let me know if you have seen Violent Night yet and your thoughts on that and any other movies coming out that you'd like me to do reviews for. I'm gearing up to take my maternity leave here soon, so we have very few videos left to film and post before that happens. So if you have any special requests or anything you'd like me to pre-film for my maternity leave, let me know. Leave a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.